In an interview with the Chicago Tribune, Hastert saying, and I quote, "When the base finds out who is feeding this monster, they are not going to be happy. The people who want to see this thing blow up are ABC News and a lot of Democratic operatives, people funded by George Soros." With us now, billionaire George Soros. His new book is entitled The Age of Fallibility, Consequences of the War on Terror. Mr. Soros, good to have you.
Yes, pleasure.
You timed it for this, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
All right. What do you make of that? That he is essentially charging you and other operatives behind some of these leaks?
Well, the implication that I had something to do with this scandal is so far off the mark that it's really laughable. I mean, it's a feeble attempt to divert attention from him and his responsibility. He's done it before.
In 2004.
To me, yeah. But this time I don't think he can get away with it.
All right, but you're a busy man, right? You wouldn't necessarily know what some of the Democratic groups in the 527 plans you fund are up to, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, so it's possible that they could be doing this sort of stuff.
It's possible, but I heard about it the first time when it appeared on television.
Let me ask you about a comment you made to the Council of Foreign Relations earlier this week, I believe, Mr. Soros, where you said, "I'd very much like to get disengaged from politics. I'm interested in policy and not politics." Does that mean you don't contribute anymore?
No, I think it's very important, actually, to re-establish checks and balances for the Democrats to capture at least one of the houses. But I think that we are really in very big trouble as a country, and we need to deal with the really dismal prospects that we are facing in the war on terror. I really became engaged in domestic politics in 2004 because I felt that the single most important thing I could do to make the world a better place is to help get President Bush out of the White House. And unfortunately, events since then have borne me out.
What did you think that, despite all your money, whatever it was, $25 million, and you touched on it in your book, the American people re-elected George Bush?
Yes. Well, partly I think the elections came a little too early for people to realize how bad things were in Iraq. But also, I think there is something wrong, unfortunately, with our electorate, because we don't like to hear inconvenient truths. We want our leaders to tell us what we want to hear. Everything is fine. We are in charge. And unfortunately, we have to face reality.
Well, what's the reality to you? You say the war on terror is essentially a mistake.
That is what I'm saying. It's a natural way to respond to the terrorist attack. We were attacked. We have to hit back, call it a war. But the way this phrase, this figure of speech was then implemented, actually was counterproductive. It has made the terrorist threat much bigger, and it has really endangered our dominant position in the world.
But you were supportive in the early days, and you spell this out in your book, that in the early days and going into Afghanistan and going after the Taliban, that you were for. And you do have a record of being for military incursions in the past, as in Bosnia, et cetera.
As a matter of fact, I was together with Paul Wolfowitz lobbying the Clinton administration for taking a more forceful position in the Balkans.
Yes, you were. But here's what might shock some people, and I guess this is why you can be a polarizing figure, Mr. Soros. You say the war on terror, as we have waged it since 9/11, has done more harm than good.
Yes.
It's pretty strong.
Well, because, you see, we abhor terrorists because they kill innocent people for political goals. Now, so when we chase them down, we really must go out of our way not to do the same thing. Because if we torture people, humiliate people, kill people who are innocent, they look at us in the same light as we look at terrorists. And that is, in fact, what has happened, particularly in Iran.
Last time I checked, there aren't a whole lot of billionaires on the planet, but according to Forbes magazine, he is the 27th richest one. George Soros back with us. The book is The Age of Fallibility, Consequences of the War on Terror. And in that book, he has nothing good to say about the President of the United States. Nothing. Zero. You hate the guy.
No, I certainly don't hate the guy at all. This is a misunderstanding.
You didn't say one thing nice about it.
Unfortunate. I am opposed to the policies. I think
But has he done anything good? We got the Dow at a record. We got the economy doing pretty well. 4.7% unemployment.
I have no beef with the economic policy. I think I can say something good actually about him, because he has been very broad-minded on immigration, and he really sponsored a good bill. Unfortunately, the House Republicans
are a little tougher.
refused. They just took the punitive part. They didn't take the constructive part.
But you'll acknowledge that the economy is okay. The markets are okay.
Look, I don't want to... markets are something else.
I know you're worried about a slowdown and maybe even a recession
but
next year.
I think, for instance, the Federal Reserve is handling the situation very well by not having raised interest rates more. So, look, I'm not... the fact that one side is wrong, it doesn't mean that the other side is right.
But I got this feeling, Mr. Soros, and I could be interpreting too much from the book and from your prior comments. I followed you closely for a couple of decades. That you just don't think this president is right for the job, fit for the job, that you almost think he's an idiot. You said that George W. Bush is more like an unwitting tool. Cheney, you're referring to the vice president, is the power behind the throne. You really believe that?
That's exactly what I believe.
So what, Cheney goes in the office, says this is what we're doing today?
I think that the Cheney-Rumsfeld wing of the Bush administration is the one that is really fostering absolutely the wrong policies. My real disagreement, I think, is with them.
Okay, so it's not so much that you think battling bad guys or people who want to throw around planes into buildings is bad. You're thinking our response to it is bad. You're saying that you've got to talk to the bad guys?
No, look, incidentally, when you make peace, you need to make peace with your enemies, not with your friends. So, while there's no talking to Al-Qaeda, it's nonsense, there are many other political movements that use terrorist tactics, which are really not acceptable, where I think it's very necessary to actually come to some agreement. I mean, in Iraq, right? It's really the occupation and the humiliation we have inflicted on people whom we put into prison, tortured, humiliated.
But humiliation, here's humiliation for 3,000 of our people getting killed. And after that, you say, when I heard President Bush say either you are with us or you're with the terrorists, I was reminded of Nazi propaganda. You're a very smart man. London School of Economics. Is that a proper statement to compare the leader of the free world to a Nazi?
No, I did not call President Bush a Nazi.
You said, reminded you of Nazi propaganda.
You know, when people who criticize the administration's policies are called traitors, that is exactly what the Nazis did. And that does remind me. And I do take objection to it, because that's against the principles of critical discussion which has made this country great.
John Kerry has said his vote for the war, in retrospect, was a mistake. Here's a guy you wanted and pushed heavily and expensively to get elected. Didn't work out. Now he says it's a mistake. What do you think of someone who says, mistake?
Oh, you know, this is the thing that we have to learn, that we are fallible. And we make mistakes.
So he wants to get us out.
And if we make mistakes, we have to admit our mistakes. And I think what we have done and the way we have done it was a mistake. And now the president is telling us that we should stay the course. But he's taking us in the wrong direction. We're getting deeper and deeper into a hole. Now,
I'm sorry, I want to be clear this. Now, John Kerry, as you know, sir, is saying, get out.
Yeah.
And what I'm asking you is the person you can support in 2008. If it's Hillary Clinton, who's still for the war, many criticisms, but still for the war, or John Kerry, who's against the war, get out, who would and could you support?
Look, the message I want to deliver to the American public, that we are woefully misled, that we must change course. We have to recognize our mistakes. We actually have to get out of Iraq.
When?
We have to
Do you think it's a timetable?
We have to get out with the least possible damage, because we are sitting on an incipient civil war.
So how do you do that? When I know you're saying get out, I know most Democrats saying eventually we have to get out. What I have trouble getting a handle on, Mr. Soros, is when. What are you talking about?
I think that we have to make it clear that we're going to get out. We have to actually threaten the people, the various groups, Sunni, Shia, and Iran. We have to threaten them that we are going to get out. And therefore they need to agree to some formula that will enable Iraq to live without civil war.
Could you support Hillary Clinton?
Of course, I'd be delighted to see
even with her position being in Iraq.
I think that she also admits that it was a mistake. I think. Look, I think.
So you can support her.
Pardon?
You could support her.
Absolutely.
Any Democrat to you is better than any Republican?
No, not necessarily. but I think that what we really need to recognize, that everybody now understands going into Iraq was a mistake. But I think the trouble started earlier, you see. I think we got into a false direction, because if you'd said 3,000 people were killed, so we have got to torture, kill, humiliate 20,000 people in Iraq. Those are not the people who did damage to us.
I guess
now we are doing to them something
that
we will not accept.
Fair game, fair game. Yeah. Let me switch gears a little bit. A lot of Americans who hear you, Mr. Soros, say, who is this rich guy who came to America, became a billionaire, to bash America and all this? And he urges that the rich have a responsibility, yet his quantum fund isn't even housed in this country. He's dodging taxes.
So
what I'm asking you is, they say, George Soros, hypocrite.
Allow me to tell you just a little bit about myself, okay? I was born in Hungary. I've suffered through Nazi occupation, communist occupation. I left the country. I was a student. I adopted this idea of an open democratic society as something worth fighting for. And when I had $30 million in 1979, I set up a foundation. And since then, I spent half my fortune on fighting communism and promoting democracy. I mean, I've been at it longer than President Bush.
Mr. Soros, I tell you this, there is no disputing how generous you've been with your money. You've given better than $5 billion to a variety of... Here's what I'm asking you, though. All right? Now, your quantum fund is registered actually in Netherlands Antilles. So what I'm curious about is when you advocate that the well-to-do should pay more in taxes.
Look,
No, I'm just asking. Please. Do you see where some would say, wait a minute?
No. Let me say two things. First of all, I pay taxes. My fund is in Curaçao. The foreign shareholders don't pay taxes. I pay taxes on my income from that fund. My management company is located here. We pay taxes. So this is a lie that I have seen in print, and I've seen it repeated.
So the other taxes you pay in this country, are they at the 35%?
I would like to discuss policy. You're now falling into the trap of your colleagues in Fox, which shall remain nameless, because I think they are so disreputable. I wouldn't want to mention their names.
Soros, I respect you.
That's why I came here.
I don't think we can be demeaning.
So let's not get personal. Let's talk about policy.
But because this is part and parcel of the same story.
Yeah. The whole story. Let your public find out who I really am, what I really stand for. I chose this country as my home. Right? And I want this country to be worthy of the principles that have made it great. And now we are losing those principles. We are being misled. We need to correct it.
You mentioned that personalities of this network. You meant Bill O'Reilly.
Of course I meant Bill O'Reilly, but I really consider him disreputable.
Well, you don't like him at all?
No, I think that he uses methods that I find unacceptable. That's why I wouldn't go on his show. I'm happy to be here, but I have to stop you when you get personal.
Well, the reason I read a lot of books, I loved your book, and I love Bill O'Reilly's book, Culture War, because he made some pretty strong remarks about you, Mr. Soros. He said, Soros is a smart, ruthless ideologue who will stop at nothing to advance the secular, progressive offensive. He has no scruples, ethics, or sense of fair play. A lot of nasty things said about you. Yeah, people who said that your daddy Warbucks a drug legalization. Yes. That was a Democratic former HUD secretary, health secretary. But does that bug you that no matter what good you try to do, people come back and say, Daddy Warbucks with evil intentions?
Look, that is actually what pushes me to stand up. You know, I supported people who stood up for freedom and democracy in countries like the Soviet Union. And when I see that the principles of open society are undermined by people like O'Reilly with his methods, then I feel that I've got to stand up. So the more he insults me, the more I will stand up against it, because he is using a remarkable trick. You know, he comes straight out of George Orwell, who wrote a book, 1984, you know, Newspeak, that you say the opposite of what you mean. So
you're not a fan?
What?
You're not a fan. No, if we were to offer you, for example, Factor Gear, you'd say no. Let me talk a little finally about the economy. I know you see a slowdown coming, Mr. Soros. Many agree with you. But is the slowdown you see coming next year a recession or worse? A housing bubble that bursts or worse?
That actually is the $64 question. And I honestly am very much on the fence about it, because there's no question that the housing bubble is being deflated. But there are other positive developments which may counterbalance it. So is it going to be a soft landing or a hard landing?
What do you think?
I don't have the answer, but I think we will think it's a soft landing, even if it is going to turn into a hard landing. And that's where we are right now.
You know, you don't get enough credit, but you're one of the most successful investors on the planet. The Quantum Fund, if you got it in 1970, I think within the span of a decade, you made almost, 4,000% or something like that?
I think actually hedge funds are very good way to manage risky money. Now, people underestimate the risk, and the managers often over-leverage. And there is a certain danger in the over-leveraging of hedge funds. But on the whole, I think it will correct itself.
All right. The book is The Age of Fallibility. The author, George Soros, one of the richest, also one of the most generous men on the planet. Good seeing you. Will you come back?
Happy to.
Happy to.